Well, good morning. What a packed house. How fortunate we are. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Salem Chamber. It's great to have everybody here. We have a number of seats sprinkled throughout, and we don't feel we want anybody standing today. So please make sure to weave your way through. I think Chris, John have a seat up here so we can get everybody filled in and welcome everybody into this room. My name is Tom Hoffert. I have the opportunity to serve as CEO of the Salem Chamber. We have a great program for all of you today. Thank you, members, for investing in this organization and really watching the key topics that we are taking on as an organization. We've got a pretty diverse panel today. We'll have a legislative preview. We'll hear a little bit about fire inspections, and then we'll get an update on the State Street road diet and what is occurring next in these days to come. We will have the chance after we hear from each of the speakers to engage them on their topic. And then we're actually going to have, we'll start with Representative Andersen, and then we'll have legislative preview questions. And then we'll move into our fire inspections keynote, and we'll do questions there. Then we're actually going to release all four. So the second set of city staff may come forward to talk about State Street. So to kick us off, I'd like to reintroduce all of you to our representative representing House District 19, Mr. Tom Andersen. Representative Andersen will give us a brief legislative preview, and then we will hear from Preston Mann shortly thereafter regarding the local control and safety ballot. But we'd like to start with Representative Andersen.
Thank you very much, Tom. I'm really happy to be here, and I heard State Street, which is something that I worked on. I'm looking at the planners over there for many, many years in my 8 years on the city council. I really value the work of the chamber and the business community. It's an essential partner in making Salem a wonderful place to live, to have a business, to go to school, to work, and raise a family. I'm proud to have lived here since almost 20 years now, and I came up from that place down south, which doesn't even equal what we've got going here. I also have to say, though, I feel just a little surreal for me to be here talking to you about what is facing us here in the city of Salem and the surrounding area with what happened yesterday in Minneapolis. I know the situation very well. My younger brother has been the head pastor of a big downtown church in Minneapolis for over 25 years. So I've spoken to him about what's going on there. And regardless of one's political view on things, what happened yesterday was a murder. And our police department, our state troopers, none of those people would act like this. A 37-year-old mother of a 6-year-old got killed for no reason. And we can look at what the government tells us, but we can also look at what is on every videotape there. So I'm extremely disturbed by this. I couldn't sleep much last night, so I will probably be less coherent than I normally am. But having said that, I think we all need to think about the state of our policing in our society, especially federal. I've got nothing but trust and respect for the Lane County Sheriff's Department, for the Oregon State Troopers, and for the City of Salem Police. None of them would ever act that way that the rent-a-cops did last night. So I'm sure I've got a different view than everybody else here, but I would be remiss and I would not be true to myself and my moral views of things if I wouldn't mention something. So I'm done with that now. I'd be happy to engage somebody anyplace else. But now let's talk about what is happening right now in our city. Session coming up is a short session. It only lasts 35 days. And on the regular session, it's 160 days. And we start February 2nd and conclude March 8th. Each legislature in the special session gets 2 bills. I'll talk about my 2 bills in a minute. One of them relates to what I just spoke about earlier. I just want to quickly flag some of the things we did in the last long session. We passed a major reform to the civil commitment statute, which makes it easier to civilly commit people who are a danger to themselves, a danger to their family, or a danger to others. We widened out the standards so it's easy to do. And one of my bills relates to that as well. this particularly affects our area because we have the state prison and the state pen. Many people get released there on our streets. Many of those folks in both situations are a danger to themselves or others, have some sort of mental disease, and they're on our streets, folks. So it's important that we can give them the treatment they need, but it's also very important that we can keep our streets safe for you and your families and for businesses and for people who live here. I started this whole project in 24, and we made the first reform in 50 years. Second thing I'm proud of what we did is we did something about rising electrical bills that are really stressing a lot of seniors and families and people on fixed income. We doubled the funding for low-income energy assistance from 20 million to 40 million to protect record numbers of household shutoffs during winters and hot summers. And it's a very effective way. Each residential monthly bill is paying 70 cents a month more to take care of this problem. That's nothing. And the city of Salem has done this in my time, and people are vetted for the city of Salem's program through social service agency. I think it's Mid-Willamette Community Action here, and the same thing would happen in the state. You've got to show a separate agency that you have help, need help with your bills, and then they will recommend that. Last thing we did was I obtained, actually, I and my staff, over $9 million for Salem, including $6.1 million for the Marion Polk Food Share, $350,000 for renovation of Elsinore Theater, and $750,000 for the Willamette Heritage Center. So what's going to happen in the short session? Here are my two bills. First one is a follow-up to civil commitment. I am working with Sheriff Nick Hunter, Marion County Sheriff's Department, and also the Marion County Commissioners. And I am no longer an active lawyer, but when I was, I represented the Marion County Sheriff's Department in a whole lot of litigation. The basic issue here is to amend state law so that law enforcement will not be held criminally or civilly liable when helping transport people for civil commitment. In other words, you get picked up on the street, you get taken to the courts say you've got to go to a secured residential facility. The transportation for this is done by our Marion County Sheriff's Department. So I've got an amendment there that law enforcement will not be held civilly or criminally liable for transporting people for civil commitment so long as this is a quote from the statute, the use of restraints or physical force is made in good faith without malice and the officer reasonably believes it is necessary to protect the person, the officer, or the public. That's a standard that I know our Sheriff's Department will keep to. But they need to be protected because they're performing a valuable service for us. So I want to thank the county commissioners and Sheriff Hunter because we have met a number of times and to come up with this particular piece of legislation. Now, my second bill is probably a little more controversial. I'm asking that the legislature refer to the voters for a constitutional amendment to ban the use of secret police in our society. And I have chief sponsored this bill, and I've got other chief sponsors with me because I believe the people of Oregon should be able to vote to reject the use of secret police. And with what happened yesterday in Minneapolis, I think this bill becomes even more important. Again, I've got nothing but trust and admiration for the local police, the local sheriff, and the state troopers. They can keep our community safe and healthy and free from crime and safe for everybody. We don't need the federal police to intervene. We can do it ourselves in our state. And what it says is, no police shall be masked or unidentified except for SWAT teams, undercover operations. They must at all times wear a badge and their number. They must not mask up unless the situation actually calls for it. In other words, you're going into a building where there may be some chemicals or something else. And they cannot seize anyone from the streets of our cities unless they see them committing a crime. which any police officer can do any place, or unless they have a warrant signed by a circuit court judge to go after this person. I don't think we should stand by when the government enforces laws without accountability and transparency. My bill will still allow longstanding police practices. The bill is about protecting basic freedoms. Being pulled off the street by anonymous secret police is something I never dreamed could happen in our country. And this bill has bipartisan and bicameral support. But this is not the America that I grew up in, that I want my children and grandchildren to grow up in. Now, what do I see coming down the pike for 2026? First, unfortunately, we've got to begin bracing for massive federal budget cuts to healthcare, SNAP, food stamp funding that are coming to Oregon as part of HR 1. The first wave of cuts began January of this year and includes approximately 35,000 Oregons will lose all their Affordable Care Act marketplace subsidies, and over 111,000 Oregons will see large premium hikes. That probably could affect many of us in this room. The 2027 cuts that are coming will affect SNAP. 300,000 Oregonians are facing cuts. Medicare, over 200,000 folks are facing cuts in their Medicare. The overall size of the federal cuts under HR 1 for Oregon in the current biennium 25-27, $1 billion. In the 27-29 biennium, $5.6 billion. 27-29, $3.1 billion. So those monies that were coming to the state through federal pass downs, we're not going to get those anymore. We still have people who have the same urgent needs that we need to take care of them. We have a moral obligation to do that. Second issue that I see coming in the legislature is we have to fix a transportation package that is acceptable and works for everybody. I had one speech prepared, but then Governor Kotek, kind of stole my thunder yesterday because she withdrew. She's going to ask us to repeal the current legislature. Now, I believe we were elected to fix problems, and that's why I voted for the smaller one that passed in the 2025 special session. I don't think we can ignore basic infrastructure safety and maintenance needs. We need to keep the roads open when a mudslide happens, like just happened out in Tillamook. We need to ensure that roads are plowed during snowstorms in the Cascades and safety lines are kept painted on our 2-lane highways. Closer to home, a risk we face right at this moment is the need to retrofit the Marion Street Bridge to West Salem. An earthquake could render that bridge impassable. We need to make retrofits as soon as possible, and with what's going on now, we can't do that. So during a short session, I really look forward to working across party lines to find a more durable solution to get the funding we need. After decades of neglect and deferred maintenance, we need to keep our roads and bridges safe and operational. Clearly, the bills that were passed in the last legislation, or the bill that was passed, it was not the answer. The governor recognized that. So we've got time now to all work together to see what we can do to fix a vital part of our infrastructure, which is our transportation. The work isn't going to be easy or popular. It's part of the job description of being a legislature. We have to take care of problems. The problem's not going to solve itself, and it's going to require some kind of sustained funding. There's simply no free lunch, and there are no free highways. So I think that's all I have right now, but I'm happy to answer questions within the time limit.
Perfect time. Representative Andersen, take questions from the field, please. That's President Miller.
Yeah.
Mr. Andersen refers to his worlds, and forcing him to come to this meeting this morning and share his thoughts about what happened yesterday in Minneapolis. My world prevents me from sitting very quietly without missing the fact that I need to do that in this setting.
Additional, yes, Mark.
A question about your bill to unmask the federal police.
Sure.
I'm also interested in protecting all law enforcement, and in the current social media world and AI, police officers are being attacked personally and the families. Is there any amendment that you would add to this to protect all officers in the state of Oregon from social media attack and their family getting attacked?
I agree with you completely. Doxing is horrible. It should not happen on either side of any situation. And I will tell you, we already have laws in place to protect our law enforcement community. It includes House Bill 3047, which was passed in 2021, and House Bill 4156 in 2024. And I voted for those. I didn't vote for the 21. I was on the council, but I voted for the 24. You're exactly right. We need to protect our people who are out there on the front line. And the bill that I'm talking about will have exceptions for, as I said, for various things, including undercover operations. And we already have in place laws against doxing.
Amy.
Since you have decided that what happened in Minneapolis was a murder, that could have been prevented in a state that allowed the, they're not secret police. They are, sorry, was there something I said was funny?
Well, yeah, they're not secret police. They were masked to cover their face. They don't have badges. Do you think you asked me a question, I responded. Now keep going.
If our ICE officers were allowed to go into the jail and take the criminals who are here illegally, and don't tell me it's a misdemeanor, they're here illegally. And if they could take those that have gone a step further and are criminals and take them through the process. So would you support legislation allowing our ICE officers, our police officers to turn over illegal people in our country so that they can go through the process to be decided whether they're here legally or not? These are criminals. Would you support that?
First of all, ma'am, they're not ICE police officers. They are people who would not qualify at all to be a state trooper.
Not what they are.
Just ask me a question. I can respond to it.
Those people that have been identified as criminals here illegally go through the process of whether they should stay or they should go.
No.
Thank you.
Nick.
Just a quick question. What if these police officers or secret police are just protecting themselves from COVID by wearing a mask? Just a few years ago, it was required to go anywhere. You had to wear a mask. What if they're just concerned interacting with the public? They don't know where they've been, and they're just trying to mask up and protect themselves.
Well, that would be an exception that I wouldn't mind. And we know everybody mask up during COVID. So no, that's not an issue. I already said you could mask up if the situation calls for it.
So then would you not agree that interacting with?
I just said yes.
Yeah, cool. Thank you so much.
Councilor Matthews.
So with your event or with the mask or the secret police bill they bring, my question would be from just a structural standpoint, say the police or anything. In Oregon, you're a police officer, you're in uniform. If I see a crime, I'm a police officer, I can still arrest someone. Still, concern with the bill might be that prohibits someone before they no longer have the badge, they don't have anyone. Does this prohibit their ability to actually do something if they see something, even if they're off duty, or do you not see that?
No, counselor, it does not prohibit them. In fact, that's what I said. One of the exceptions are if they see a crime being committed. That's right. That's right. They're still a police officer.
Mr. Whitnell.
It'd be good to see it. I think we worked on about 3 projects.
Yes, we have. Well, listen, there's probably, you and I agree on probably on more things than somebody else and I in this group might be.
I said too.
We already had that conversation. It might disturb you more to know that my only car is an all-electric car.
Yeah, serious note, we have a problem here in Oregon, particularly in Marion County, where the businesses aren't esteemed anymore. And those projects that you and I worked on, you go back 20 years, I go back 57 years. And I went back, we had a situation in the city council where business community put some money in downtown, and there's 33 people who said that the good old boys were wanting to put money downtown, clean it up, what have you, for the Christmas activities. Problem downtown, big boat got bids, bridges lived in and below and stuff. And so I went back and analyzed, did what projects were done 40s, 950 million. This was successful. And you know, I mean, so the idea that businesses are bad, and Oregon is 50th in the nation for people growing up, coming into our state. So I think we need to, we need to have everybody working together instead of this. And it's interesting too, just to say that, you know, last November, the 3 Democrats that ran for office statewide, they lost in Marion County. And it's the first time since 1986 that chose the president. And probably wasn't the one everybody thought that maybe should be there. They were voting. But you know what I'm saying? We need a balance.
I agree, Mr. Whitnell, and I will tell you that on the city council and continuing, I spent a lot of time doing exactly what you and I are talking about doing together with Main Street and with Jim Vu. A lot of things were done to keep downtown viable and a place for people want to come and be and shop and eat and spend time. I will also tell you that in my nearly 50 years as an attorney, for close to 40 of those years, I represented small businesses. I worked for Safe Corporation. I defended businesses and insurance companies in workers' compensation. So what I did affects the bottom line of every single person in this room, because I'm trying to make sure that only valid claims were accepted and paid. So, you know, I may look like some geek up here in a bow tie, but I spent my entire professional life representing small businesses and trying to affect their bottom line. So I'm not anti-business at all.
Last question, Sherry.
So I sat very similar to this about a month or so-ish ago, and there was a representative who made it very clear that ODA has a lot of pet projects that money is earmarked for that will, in his opinion, never get off the ground. And there was a representative from Hayat's Food Chain from the union who never denied any of that. And so it leads me to believe that he was probably correct in going after new money for transportation and ODOT and whatnot. Do you have any plans to look into earmarked money that has been marked for programs that is sitting there and could go towards these 500-ish or so jobs and snow plowing? Because in my opinion, it feels as if we put snow plowing on the line because it tugs at people's hearts. But yet, according to the representative a month ago, there's lots of different money pools earmarked. Do you have a plan to look at any of those pools of money that has been designated for projects that are dead?
Well, the first thing, you're giving me more power than I have. I'm the bottom of the pyramid here, but I agree that that's part of the things we need to look at. We need to see where's the money going now? Is it effective? Is it not effective? Are we just playing whack-a-mole with putting down something here and another problem pops up here? So this is exactly what we need to be doing in this short session and beyond. So do I personally have a plan? If I personally had a plan, I don't think I'd be sitting here today. I'd be out doing something about the plan. But I agree with your the premises that you've stated.
Tom was obviously tongue-in-cheek, as he is part of the majority party at state legislature. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in thanking Representative Andersen for joining us today. Next up, it is a pleasure for me to welcome back to the Salem Director of External Affairs at Oregon Business and Industry, our friend Preston Mann. Preston is going to give us a preview of the Local Control and Safety Act, a ballot measure repealing House Bill 3115 to restore local control for the implementation of public camping ordinances. Preston, thank you for joining us again, sir.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you to the Salem Chamber for having me this morning. My name is Preston Mann. I am the Director of External Affairs for Oregon Business and Industry. Easiest way to think of OBI is as the state's Chamber of Commerce. That's in fact exactly what we are. About 1,600 members across the state, all 36 counties, virtually every industry that you can think of. A lot of local chambers, including the Salem Chamber, are a part of our membership as well. I oversee our organization's political work and work with our government affairs team on public affairs strategies that drive our successes in the public sector arena, primarily in the state legislature. I'm here this morning to talk about the Local Control and Safety Act. But before I do that, I just want to commend the representative for his commitment to resolving some of the issues we're facing in the civil commitment space. Addressing the challenges, which are many in the civil commitment space, is not a sexy topic area. Frankly, it's overlooked by probably 90% of legislators. It's expensive, it's complicated. There's lots of old laws on the books that need to be replaced. They're not easy to replace. So having a legislator from Salem, where we are so acutely impacted by those issues, that is so dedicated to that cause, is a really helpful and beneficial thing. So thank you for your work in that space. I am here to talk about the Local Control and Safety Act, but I would be remiss if on the doorstep of a legislative session, I didn't share that I've got a little bit more optimism than I normally do ahead of a legislative session. And that's because we're seeing a sort of change in approach from the very highest levels of our state government when it comes to how we're evaluating our state's economy in the private sector. And that really starts with the governor. Governor Tina Kotek recently released what she calls her roadmap for prosperity. She will soon be appointing a chief prosperity officer and a prosperity council. The governor came out with some recommendations that are pretty specific, that address some of the challenges that have held the private sector back over the last decade. Things like permitting reform, things like modernizing enterprise zones, and taking a look at our economy holistically and saying, okay, we used to be in the top 20 for states in terms of attractiveness for business competitiveness. Now we're in the bottom 10. Let's take an inventory of what we've done, how we've got here, and the policies that we can adopt that are going to improve our rankings. She stated a goal of moving Oregon into the top 10 for business competitiveness. Now, there's a lot of work to be done to get there, given where we're at. I get that. There's probably some healthy skepticism in this room. I think that's warranted. But the fact that at the highest levels of our state government now, we are acknowledging that we have a problem in terms of our state's economic competitiveness, and we need to do something about it, is a good thing. So when you hear the legislature start to take up some of these proposals in 2026, I hope you will engage with the chamber, engage with organizations like my own, and testify in front of the legislature, stressing the importance of policies that will help our economy grow. With that, I'll dive into what I'm actually here to talk about today, which is the Local Control and Safety Act. The Local Control and Safety Act is probably the shortest piece of legislation or ballot measure I've ever worked on. It simply does one thing. It repeals House Bill 3115, a law that was created that really restricts local government's abilities to respond to unsanctioned public camping. And before I dive into that too much, I just want to say, I know this is an issue that can provoke strong emotions pretty quickly. We're all deeply concerned for our friends and neighbors that are living on the streets. Many of your organizations actively contribute to relief efforts. And similarly, many of you are very and appropriately frustrated by the homelessness challenges we are facing as a state. It's something, whether you're on the right side of the political spectrum or on the left side of the political spectrum, people consistently raise in public opinion surveys as something that's not working. So the Local Control and Safety Act is what I would consider a relatively narrow fix to respond to the crisis in our streets in a way that gives local governments more control in how they respond. First, if you can bear with me here, a little bit of kind of nuanced background, but background that's important to this conversation. So House Bill 3115 was adopted by the state legislature in 2021. And one of the main reasons cited for its passage at the time was to align with a court decision called Martin versus Boise, which said that public camping time, place, and manner ordinances must be objectively reasonable based on the totality of circumstances through the lens of the person experiencing homelessness. That is a relatively complicated definition, and as you can imagine, it has created a lot of confusion and court cases and litigation. But that decision was later overturned in a decision called Grants Pass versus Johnson. The U.S. Supreme Court effectively overturned the Martin versus Boise decision. That Grants Pass being Grants Pass, Oregon. The court made explicitly clear that local governments should have the ability to respond to unsanctioned public camping in the manner they see fit. The irony, though, in this case, is that despite this case and the court decision invoking an Oregon city's name, that decision impacted 49 other states, but not Oregon. That is because of House Bill 3115. We had passed a statute. That statute remains in effect. The root of the problem is really a lack of clarity. The objectively reasonable standard is poorly defined and has left local governments in the position of either attempting to respond to unsanctioned public camping and running the risk of getting sued, or taking insufficient or minimal action to respond to unsanctioned public camping for fear of lawsuits. Frankly, I think a paralyzed response on the part of our cities and counties serves nobody well. But that's unfortunately the reality in a lot of communities across the state right now. House Bill 3115 is also particularly problematic because we all recognize that homelessness is an inherently local issue. The unsanctioned public camping issues that you might be experiencing here in Salem are very different than they are in Prineville or Portland. The causes on the ground just simply are not the same. So it reinforces in our minds why we need to empower local governments to actually respond to local situations in a manner that fits with their community's values. These are some examples of how House Bill 3115 is impacting the state currently. So Portland, about 2 years ago, adopted a daytime camping ban. That daytime camping ban was challenged under House Bill 3115 and almost immediately put on hold. In November, the Portland City Council and the mayor put forward a modified camping ban. That camping ban is still on the books, but it's sort of an open question on whether or not there's going to be litigation again. Again, regardless of how you feel about the specific policy in Portland and whether or not they're taking the right approach, I hope we can all agree that city councils being forced to pass resolutions and then sort of bracing themselves for litigation doesn't serve the city well. It doesn't serve our friends and neighbors living on the streets well, but that is what this law is ultimately resulting in right now. I would highlight another situation in Pendleton where, from what I understand, there were a group of individuals experiencing homelessness. The city was in active communication with this population, trying to make modifications to their approach to comply with House Bill 3115. And within the context of those mediation efforts, some attorneys subsequently pulled out of those negotiations and the city was sued. Now we have another situation where a city is being sued, a city in the lurch in terms of having clarity on how they can respond. There are countless examples across the state. Virtually any city that has passed local ordinances related to unsanctioned public camping is at risk of potentially being sued. And I would again say, I just don't think that's a situation that benefits really anybody. So again, the solution here, I think, is pretty straightforward. We need to repeal the law or modify it in a way that will allow for local control and clarity. Doing so would eliminate that uncertainty that's led to a lot of this litigation. It would empower city councils to take a more proactive step in responding to unsanctioned public camping and restore local control. And allowing communities to make their own decisions about how to respond to local situations. That last point is really, really important. Again, this is an issue that can provoke really strong emotions. And certainly there are some opponents of this ballot measure, and they've sort of characterized this as, well, Preston just wants to sweep tent camps. That's what this is really about. That is absolutely not true. That is not what this ballot measure does. This ballot measure repeals an existing law that is standing in the way of local governments responding to unsanctioned public camping in their communities. It does not sweep tent cities. Every local city council, county commissioners would then have the ability, if this law is repealed, to respond to situations in their own community in the manner they see fit. Salem has a relatively divided city council. I highly doubt that if this law is repealed, you're going to see just mass tent sweeps all over the place. You're going to see a constructive conversation about how to move our city forward. Many cities have made significant progress, even with this law in the books. Portland, Salem, certainly in the last couple of years. But the reality is this law continues to stand in the way, and it needs to be repealed or modified. In terms of next steps, we think, given the crisis in our streets, this is something that deserves urgent attention from our state legislature. I'm excited to share that Senator Mark Meek, a Democrat out of the Clackamas County area, has agreed to introduce legislation that repeals House Bill 3115. I've personally, along with some of my colleagues and some of my partners at the cities, have talked with Republicans and Democrats in both chambers of the legislature who support repeal or at least modification of this law to give local governments the clarity they need. I really think that there is majority support in both chambers of the legislature for at least fixing this law in a way that makes it make sense for our local governments. Maybe everybody can't get there on a full repeal. You know, I understand everybody has their own political calculus, but from my conversations, I really feel like people understand that, okay, not only is the 3115 law outdated per the US Supreme Court's decision, but it's resulting in our cities getting sued. We need to do something about this and clarify what this means for our local governments. As you might know, there's also a ballot measure that we filed that repeals House Bill 3115. I myself am a chief petitioner on that measure. Mayor Hoy has joined me on that, and an attorney from Portland who has experience in this policy area has joined me as well. I'll be honest with you, I don't want to take that question all the way to the ballot. I would much prefer the legislature, through their committee process, have a robust discussion about how this law is working or not working and how to fix it. But this bill has been introduced in the past, and the legislature has taken a pass on trying to address this problem. So the ballot measure is effectively a backstop. If the legislature does not take action on this issue, we will go ahead and move forward with collecting the signatures necessary to put this on the ballot. Ballot measures are a blunt instrument. We don't get to modify the existing statute through a ballot measure. It will simply be a repeal, and then I would expect the 2027 legislature will come in and take a look at it again. But again, our highest priority is urging the legislature to take a close look at this issue and to take some action on it in 2026. Cool, last slide here. Just briefly on how you can get involved. We've got a landing page on our website. I would encourage you to visit that. Just Google Oregon Business and Industry Local Control and Safety Act. It should pop right up. Like I said, we're going to be lobbying legislators very directly this session to move forward on this issue. We'd love to have you join us. If this is an issue you're concerned about, reach out to me and we'll get you connected in the right place. With that.
Question, Director Mann.
Anybody really concerned about the property taxes? I mean, just they're going to go down. And the value, I mean, they're going to because the value of property is going down significantly. Rural district, you could buy a condo for $600,000, rent for 1.2, now $750,000, these days $3,000. So, and I mean, no one's seeing the bigger picture, and everybody's emotional about stuff. I mean, how we better run out of money here.
The Governor's Prosperity Council is, only two names have been announced so far. Curtis Robinhold of the Port of Portland and Renee James, the former CEO of Intel, who founded Ampere Computers. Those are two people I respect, who have a long history in this state and who are taking a really holistic look at the challenges we're facing as a state. I know that taxes across the board are going to be a part of that conversation. You know as well as I do that our tax system is kind of riddled with different choices along the way that in the aggregate don't make a ton of sense anymore and are creating a lot of very different problems. So I am hopeful And I've heard some conversations to this effect that they are going to launch a longer conversation about how to restructure the tax code, certainly including property taxes in this state in a way that actually makes sense and provides for a little bit more stability.
Additional questions for Director Mann? All right. Preston, thank you for always being here. We appreciate your presentation. Now we'll switch over to a relatively newer topic that you may have seen. I had the opportunity to meet with Chief Gerboth on December 18th to get a preview to this topic and to get us dug in a little more on the update on fire inspections process for local businesses and addressing compliance issues. I am proud to introduce you to Salem Fire Chief David Gerboth. Along with Chief Gerboth, today is Fire Deputy Jordan Wakem. Great to have you both here.
Thank you. I'm going to stand. I can't see everybody here. Appreciate you having me today. Understandably, I'm in front of a business group, and I know fees is a 4-letter word, and I'm not making light of it whatsoever. I understand rising costs, so I hope to provide some clarity of that today. Jordan Wakem is one of our deputy fire marshals. He has a pretty broad range of responsibilities, from plan check to fire inspections, community outreach, as well as conducting our fire investigations. So our deputy fire marshals have a lot of responsibilities. Before I get into my comments, January 8th, anybody have any significance of January 8th? Anybody? So yes,
Birthday.
the king. Thank you. Elvis's birthday, the king. You're right. Also,
I'm all shook up.
Also, Kim Jong-un, the beloved leader of North Korea, it's his birthday today. It is also your fire chief's birthday today, so go gentle on me a little bit here. So as we get into this, all right? So, why are we even here? And about fire inspections, we want to have consistent scheduling. We want to have consistency with our compliance throughout our community. We want to reduce any reliance we have on enforcement actions, but we want to bring a stronger relationship with the business community. The reason that we do these is business continuity. We want to minimize property damage, and really it's about community and firefighter safety. And ultimately, we are mandated to do fire inspections. We are required by code and Oregon law to do fire inspections. We do not have a choice. For decades, we have operated under what we call a partially exempt organization. And what that is that the Oregon State Fire Marshal has delegated the responsibility of fire prevention and those inspections to the Salem Fire Department. Why we do that and the benefits to that is that we have local control. We do local inspections, whether it's plan check, how we do fire, do construction. We can have those local discussions. If there's a appeals process, it stays local. It is not a one-size-fits-all state of Oregon policy. State of Oregon is also understaffed, and plan check is one of the things that we have really concentrated on to make sure we move quickly through building permits. And if we didn't do that, we would have delays. So what is not changing? Fees or permits. There's no change. We didn't institute some new fee or some new permit. These are things that have been here for decades. That is so there was no, none of that's happening. What is happening is basically the frequency of inspections, and we have been behind on the frequency of inspections and our responsibilities as an exempt jurisdiction. So talked about it. We have requirements and the law to do that, right? This is where we're at, about 1,000 inspections a year and permits. And we think within the city, there's probably around 7,300 permitted companies, businesses throughout the city. We don't have great records. We're going through them. Why has this been about 1,000? So I mentioned our deputy fire marshals and the responsibilities they have and the concentration we put on to plan check and that. In 1991, we had 105,000 people in the city of Salem. We had a fire marshal and 6 deputy fire marshals in 1991. Recently, we got back up to 5 deputy fire marshals and a fire marshal, deputy and fire marshal. So we have not increased staffing. If anything, it's been down. And so the amount of workload that's there, we're just not able to continue. We're trying to get to 4,000 this year to see if we can at least get closer to compliance. So to do that, we've hired 2 inspectors. These are lower level positions in a deputy fire marshal. They're not there doing fire inspections or fire investigations. They're simply out there doing inspections. This is something that we've been talking about for a little while. We went through budget committee, went through city council. We have had extensive conversations about how we're funding these 2 positions. Their 2 positions are funded through an enterprise fund through building and safety. It's not out of the general fund, with the intent that the fire permits are going to reimburse their costs. So here are the fees. So I'm going to tell you about fire inspection fees and then permits. So we are one of the only organizations I'm aware of that does not charge for fire inspections. Most agencies charge fire inspection fees and they charge it on a per square foot basis. We do not do that. If your business does not require a permit, there is no cost. We help, we come in, we work collaboratively to make sure you have a safe business, but we do not charge for that. If you have a permitted hazard, then there is a fee of $150. Any additional ones are $50. And again, no charge for the actual inspection. When we looked, where'd it go? We looked at some comparative agencies. We were well below market. Most charge for inspections, I mentioned. I didn't see one that didn't. And the permit fees are significantly higher in any other jurisdiction that's comparable to it. We're very sensitive to the costs that exist within the community. Somebody asked me, well, how many fires do you get in those permitted occupancies? It's about 40% when we look at multifamily dwelling, commercials, and assembly occupancies each year. This is 2004 and 2005. And then, I mean, what does it offer? You know, reduce fire risk. I hope it is really an opportunity for us to collaborate together, clear expectations of the law that's out there. And it also gives us the opportunity for our firefighters, our inspectors to go through these businesses and increase our safety as well. It's predictable. We do have some flyers out here. I'm going to let Jordan talk about them and the safe environment. I'm going to show you this. I'm going to stop right here. Actually, I'm going to defer to Jordan for a minute and talk about the flyers that you have and what's the difference between, say, a hazard and a permit compared. Just because you have a restaurant with compressed gas of CO2 does not mean you have a permit. There are different quantities. So just give us a couple examples and what you got here, please.
Yeah. So passed out a couple flyers to you guys. The first one here just kind of is a rundown of like why we're here, what our goal is. On the backside, there is a list of common operational use permits that we would permit you guys for. The fire code does have pages and pages of operational use that we can essentially charge for, but these are the most common ones that we see in Salem. So as a couple examples of those, if you guys as a business have, let's say, 25 gallons of flammable liquid within your guys' business, that is that's something where we would issue you guys an operational use permit. If you guys have 60 gallons of flammable liquid on the outside of the building, that would also be an operational use permit. A couple other examples would be high pile storage. If you guys have like 12 feet of storage in a facility that covers an area of 500 square feet or greater, that would also be an operational use permit. Having propane on site, 1,000 gallons or under, that's $15 for a 10-year permit. And then anything over 1,000 gallons would be $25 for 10 years. Last example would be a repair garage. If you guys run a business where you guys are repairing or maintaining vehicles, that would also be a potential operational use permit. So please refer to this as just kind of some things to think about when we're coming in your guys' facility as to what we could charge an operational use permit on. And I think the big thing I want to get across is that please don't look at us as a barrier to do business. We really are there to educate businesses and to make the community safer so that, people in and out of Salem are being safe and our firefighters are safe as we respond to emergencies, throughout the day. So please use us as a resource, as somebody to just help increase safety. The next sheet is a self-inspection checklist. I'm not gonna go through this and bore you guys with everything, but a couple things in here that, this is kind of like the foundation of what we look at as we're going through inspecting, businesses. So things that we run into a lot, are showing up to a business that does not have an address, label on the building. That's tougher when a 911 call comes in and our crews are responding, in the middle of the night and they don't have an address number to verify, like, this is where we're going. That's kind of a crucial thing for us. So having address numbers on your building is big. Having a fire extinguisher within 75 feet of every portion of the building is per code, and making sure that it is serviced on an annual basis. A couple other things would be like your emergency exit lights, making sure that those are lit, in any kind of an occupancy that has more than one exit. So if the room, fills with smoke, people can determine, okay, that's my exit, and that's how we get out of the building. Lastly, just making sure that door hardware is properly installed, making sure that we have door hardware that is a single action, single motion type of unlocking device, so that anybody and everybody can get out in an emergency setting. So those are a few things that we look for. But please, again, we're going to be in and out of businesses this coming year. Please use this as a resource, ask questions. We're here for the community and for the safety of everybody here. So thank you.
Thanks, Jordan. So also the continuity of doing an inspection and how it gets to us, and firefighter safety. We do have business plans. We have pre-fire plans. We have a computer on each of our companies. When we show up to an incident, we use that for strategic and tactical operations and making decisions that can affect businesses and affect the lives of firefighters. Do you mind hitting that video? It's 55 seconds if you just indulge me here for a second. This is an unpermitted business that had compressed flammable gas. You can see the firefighters coming down the ladder. You don't see the other 8 firefighters that are inside the building right now. Unpermitted business, compressed flammable gases that shouldn't have been there. Nobody was aware of. Many firefighters are never going back to work, and one that lost all fingers on both of his hands. Thanks. Go to the next one, please. So I'm just gonna go back. I'm gonna close. I've been here 16 months in this organization. We've had a lot of change in those 16 months. We have evolved and are continuing to. I take my responsibility incredibly seriously. I take the oath that I took for protecting this community and the firefighters in this community incredibly seriously. Business continuity, preservation of property and life here, I take incredibly seriously. Just because we have not done what we're supposed to do in the last couple of decades, I cannot just come in and ignore what the law is. We are going to work collaboratively. One thing we don't have is reinspection fees on our first reinspection. If we come in, we find something, we're going to work together. We're going to come back. We don't have reinspection fees. We are trying to make this as financially palatable as possible, but at the same time, protect your business, protect your property, and protect the community. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Field, we're gonna have a few. Past President Miller can kick us off.
I had a situation having to do with inspections about a year ago. It's not back at your department. I just want to compliment you guys how responsive and to work with you were. It was fantastic. So thank you for that. And number 2, will these inspections that you're talking about include sprinkler systems, sprinkler heads?
So these will not. That's part of the annual inspection process that a business is required to hire a licensed sprinkler contractor. So that's one portion of an inspection, is having a licensed contractor come in and do an actual specific inspection on the sprinkler system itself. And what our inspectors are coming in for is going to be a lot of what this inspection sheet covers, is making sure that egress lights are working, fire extinguishers are installed, door hardware is properly installed. So stuff like that. It's going to be more so a basic type of inspection, as well as looking for any kind of hazardous materials that are on site.
I would very quickly advocate for a disinterested third party during those inspections, as opposed to the contractor.
Yeah, and we do, there's specific, fire, service inspectors and contractors that are out, performing these inspections. They've got to have certain licenses to be able to inspect, fire and life safety systems, so.
Do you want to restate what you meant there, John?
Well, I mean, it's, if you say that, these, inspection firms, may not also place sprinkler heads and service.
Okay, they do, correct. Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay. I understand.
I'm motivated, third party. Melissa and then past president here.
Just have a question regarding the enforcement, and maybe this is separate from what you guys are discussing. But I myself, my business, and then multiple businesses that I've heard from recently have had issues where code compliance has become unreasonable for the business to either stay where they are or to continue operating because of the expense. And so, and oftentimes this compliance with these inspections have come after voicing concerns to elected officials or pushing back on something that they don't understand or asking for clarification. So that tends to feel punitive rather than educational. And whether that's the intent or not, it's kind of built a pattern or a perception of Salem not cooperating with local businesses. And as Mr. Wicknell has said, Ordinance 50 is on businesses coming in. And some of these code compliances are extremely expensive and seems unreasonable. Now, obviously, public safety is essential. That's crazy. I would hate to see anybody caught in that. But how do you continue moving forward? And what is your answer to ensure that code enforcement doesn't become punitive and that you're working with the businesses? Are there options in cooperation where they don't have to bear the brunt of all these authorities?
So fire inspection, the code compliance is not in the fire department, two different things, but I think you're wrapping it up into the same thing of just enforcement action or making sure they're meeting regulations, right? Is that, yes?
Out
Okay.
because somebody else in the city has said, go check these people out.
Okay.
And there isn't a building you can, I mean, any building you go to that's been sitting for 50 years, you turn over a rock, there's going to be something. And some of these businesses have been in operations for years, and now they're being told this needs to be retrofitted, or you need to do this, and they can't do it.
Understand. So that's why we're having these conversations. I think that's a good example. At your business, sir, we're working collaboratively. It is curative, not punitive. That is not the intent. I think from our experiences and those that I've talked to, we've had good experiences. That's why we do not charge reinspection. We go out there, we do education, we have the conversations, and then we come back and see if we can rectify those issues. We do have a local appeals process, which is one of the benefits of being a exempt agency, is that it doesn't stay in a box in the state, that we can deal with it locally. I am incredibly accessible. I think for anybody that I've worked with here knows that I'm accessible. I got my card. I'm happy to give it to you. I think most people here have it, and I'm certainly willing to have those discussions. We're just starting this now. At the end of the first quarter, you have a great vehicle here of having conversations and pushing it up. And I would love to come back here in April if you would have me, and we can talk about what's happened in the first quarter, lessons learned, and areas of improvement or areas of reinforcement.
Past President Herrick.
First, I want to thank all speakers for coming in today and sitting on the line of fire. Appreciate it. This one's for Chief Gerboth. If I understood correctly, the reason that we're having to do this is because we've applied for some sort of exemption under state law that forces these inspections down on the local fire department. If that's correct, what does it look like if we don't continue to apply for that exemption?
Right. So we've had the exemption for decades. So it's not something we applied for, right? We've had it. We are in a partially exempt agency. What that means is that those responsibilities are normally handled by the Office of the Oregon State Fire Marshal are handled by the City of Salem Fire Department, our Community Risk Reduction Division. The difference is they would just go back to the Oregon State Fire Marshal. And so those requirements still have to be done. They would just be done by inspectors of the Oregon State Fire Marshal. They have a very defined policy on what they're doing, especially with plan check and construction. We have the ability to have local control that we can make modifications as long as they're still within that safety box. And then we also have, well, one is we have quicker inspections and quicker plan check. That's where we've been focusing on, so we don't have delays in construction. And then the local appeals process, which normally would, if we weren't exempt, it would go to the state. Sir.
Director Booth. There's a slide about the number of fires.
Yep. Yes, sir.
I saw percentages, but what are the actual, like, absolute numbers? And then based off of that, in terms of these inspection charts, what is your expectation of those events decreasing?
Well, the number, I'll talk about the numbers. I mean, we've had, I think we were close to 300 active working structure fires last year. Most of those occur in single family residential homes. We do not have any authority to inspect private residences, single family dwellings. So the rest of those occur generally in either multifamily, which is one of our inspections, commercial or educational assembly facilities. As far as them going down, well, certainly that's, can I come up with a definitive number on what's going to lessen those number of fires? I don't think so. I think what we can do is I certainly know from experience that how much it has helped minimize fire damage when it's happened. Knowing the buildings, having the information that is transmitted to our crews when they respond, and then having the familiarization with the structures that we're going to. I live downtown, right? It's it's a completely unique, it's a jewel that we have. And those buildings down there, turn of the century buildings, are incredibly complex. They weren't built to code now. And having that, being able to inspect those, having our crews walk through those, and the familiarity before those incidents happens is critical. And so I definitely see a reduction in seriousness of incidents.
In the context of that, you're inspected and you share with us the context of it is public safety. So in terms of, like, right now, there's annual inspection. So currently I use instant fire protection. And then part of that annual inspection is fire safety plan, provide that information that's already filed in with the fire marshal. So my question is, this additional inspection, what is that doing? What is that replacing or improving of what I'm currently doing to create a safer environment?
Sure. Well, not every business is doing that, right? I know that not every business is doing that. And those inspections themselves, if that's what's happening, it's a reinforcement. There's no charge. We're just making sure that those are happening, right? That you have a safe environment. The difference is a permitted facility, right? If you have flammable gases or something, then there is a permit that goes with that. And there's an inspection cadence on the hazard, whether it's 1, 2, or 3 years that we do a rotation on.
I guess my concern on that is creating more and the people that are doing the inspections, that doesn't create a greater opportunity. You have a system in place and saying that that's why would they apply to more inspections?
Well, okay, so the inspections that you're doing in your business, I'm sure that it's sprinklers, right? Which is a 5-year cert, I think, right, on sprinklers generally.
It's an annual inspection.
Okay,
yeah,
it's an inspection, but then probably a hood system, if it's a restaurant, those. It's not outlets, panic hardware, all those types of other issues that we're looking at, like on your self-inspection form.
Mayor Hoy and then Treva.
Our business is located in the county. My home is in the city. We experience both types of service. we had a fire in the business next door years ago, and that brought the fire marshal into our space. Gerboth was opened in 1974, so we had a lot to upgrade our systems. It was costly. It feels safer now in our investment, so we're always protected should something happen. That said, it sounds like a department that's already overworked is about to take on a lot more. And I'm just concerned about the ability to cover all of that and at the expense of the businesses themselves, when the fire marshal for the state is already supposed to be responsible for such.
So that's why we hired the 2 inspectors. That's all they do is fire inspections. They don't do the broad range of services, community outreach, plan check, fire investigations that our deputy fire marshals do. So that's why those 2 positions are there. The Oregon State Fire Marshal could do that. And we wouldn't be exempt. They would also have to go back to plan check. I think you're going to see significant delays through plan check and your appeals process. And who you contact is going to be simply the state. I think it's going to be the significantly diminished level of service.
Just I want you to be safe.
I know, we all do.
Director Gams.
With the looking to at, we've got a commercial landlord versus a commercial leasee. How are you going to define who is responsible for this fee?
That's a good question. I think it really just depends on the operation that's happening inside the building. A lot of times we will
Covered in those.
stuff like door hardware, egress lights, addressing, stuff like that. That's really on the building shell itself. We typically will put that on the owner of the building. As far as the operations go of what's happening inside the building, that's generally going to be on the business itself.
So you're going to collect 2 fees.
No, we would, so in the case of, let's say a automotive shop, if somebody owns the building, we're not charging the building owner to come in and inspect and have them take care of exit lights, door hardware, addressing. That's just a requirement. The actual automotive shop though, will obtain the operational use permit, and that fee will be on the business itself.
And I operate restaurants, so I pay all my fees, and we have all of this, but I also have instant fire protection. You know, I pay thousands of dollars to make sure that I'm at code and doing. If somebody's having, and I know my commercial insurance also checks all of those to make sure that I cover, so that I'm going to be, if a fire something, that I am covered. So is there any way to tie in how those inspections are already done?
Well, one of the things we look at is like on your hood system, for example, right? There's a tag that they do. That's one of the things we check, make sure it's current and up to date. So that would.
It's also tied in. So we use a system called the compliance engine. It's a third-party reporting system. So when these contractors come in and they test your hood suppression system or your exhaust or your egress lights, fire alarm and sprinkler system, all that stuff that gets inspected, that goes into a system that then we review the reports on. So we can verify, okay, this stuff has been taken care of, compliant, and then we basically will then focus on just the stuff that's, on this sheet. So that's kind of how it's tied in, if that makes sense.
It does, but.
We've got one more topic that's really important that we do got to cover quickly. Councilor Matthews.
Slide that kind of talks about all different fees, the different communities. They're all for the purpose. We don't have a choice for any of those communities to do our inspection if we want to, but we do have a choice whether we would rather have a state do the inspection. What is the state's cost when they do this inspection?
Inspections, the state does not charge, like we don't charge for inspections, but they do have permit fees, which I believe are significantly higher than ours. But also the plan check is the other thing where it would be delayed significantly. I will just, if I'll end with this, we have high performers. It's great. One of our other deputy fire marshals is just finishing his master's degree. And so we had a conversation. He's going to do a thesis on just this topic with inspection fees and do a real deep dive on other agencies and looking at how we move forward. So looking forward to that.
Chief, as somebody in my line of work, I tend to watch for cadence as it comes out of, and I get a couple context clues along the way when things like this are coming. Was this a city council initiative to prioritize this? Did I miss that at a city council meeting?
This is a fire department initiative to work toward getting to compliance and to meeting our legal obligations as a fire department. And we've been behind on it. The request for the 2 fire inspectors to make sure that we got there, that went through budget committee and city council, yes.
Okay. I will admit the business community has been caught a little bit by surprise on this. Our first meeting was December 18th. We're now, 13, 14 days later, we're rolling this out. I think a big piece of what we ask for as a business community is outward communication long in advance of us taking on key initiatives that are going to affect the amount that our small businesses are going to pay. And so I ponder out loud, and it certainly is above my pay grade, but delaying this type of rollout until the community has had a full chance to understand what this is going to look like, how these fees are going to be assessed and the like would be something that would be possibly worthy of the department and the city manager's office and counselors discussing if they would be open to it.
We'll certainly have that discussion. If we put a pause on the permits, I would certainly not advocate we put a pause on the actual inspections themselves. It is a public safety issue. It is a legal requirement for us to do. And so I would certainly advocate that we continue the inspections, we continue the permitting, and we can have a discussion about the actual costs.
We did go through this for 20 years without, though. And I think part of the challenge communities like us face in the small business community is we have had a very massive change. This is, your chart goes up to 4,000 per year when you were at, I wasn't mistaken.
1,000, yes.
Yeah. That's a big change for our small businesses, and that is going to bring in obviously a new pot of money into the system. And we just have not been given a heads up on that until a very short time ago. I will end my editorial with that. I just think it's really important that we communicate as a city to our residents and businesses what's coming down the pipeline in a pretty reasonable timeline so people can adjust and be ready. Ladies and gentlemen, let's thank our police chief and for up Jameson, if we'd get our new box up. State Street road down. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to welcome up to our podium Josh Adelman, our project manager on State Street, Julie Hanson, transportation planning manager with the city of Salem, Eunice Kim, who you've seen before, a long-range planning manager, and Scott Manzur from TKS Associates, the consulting firm with the city of Salem. Who's kicking us off today?
Okay.
Fantastic. Josh, take it away, sir.
I guess first of all, I have some fact sheets and exhibits.
I can pass those out while you do your research.
It's not enough for everyone, so okay. All right, so we're here to talk about the city's State Street Improvement Project from 12th Street to 17th Street. So this project has been in the works for a long time. So we're going to start off by going through the project background and some of the history of this project. And then we'll go through kind of the project scope, where we're at and where we're headed with the project.
Great. So I just wanted to give a little bit of background on this project and where it came from. It has a very long history, as Josh mentioned. It goes back over 10 years ago, back to the neighborhood plan of the Ned and Cessna neighborhood associations. The Ned and Cessna neighborhood associations did a joint neighborhood plan back in 2013 to 2015 timeframe. those two neighborhoods joined together to really identify the priorities for their neighborhoods going forward in terms of how they want their neighborhoods to grow and change. They identified this State Street corridor between 12th and 25th Street as really a priority opportunity area. They wanted to see it revitalized. They wanted to see it safer, more business friendly, more pedestrian friendly, and really a more vibrant place for the neighborhoods and for the community. That neighborhood plan was adopted by the City Council into the comprehensive plan in 2015, and then we kicked off the State Street Corridor Plan. That plan was funded by the state, and it really focused on that corridor between 12th and 25th Street on how to make it a vibrant, mixed-use development, friendly, safe corridor. It focused on both the land use, so how do we allow a mix of uses, both housing and businesses along that corridor, and it also focused on the street. How do you improve the street so that it's both bicycle and pedestrian friendly within the constrained right-of-way? One of the major priorities of this project was how do you move people, whether they're on foot, on bike, or on cars, through this corridor without having to expand the roadway into private property? And so it really looked at a new design for the street. That project was a 3-year project, 2015 to 2018. It had significant public engagement. We had a stakeholder advisory committee. Ted was on that, as well as TJ and others. It had many presentations, neighborhood association meetings. We did walking tours. We canvassed the businesses, mailings. And so we had a lot of input into this project. And ultimately, it was adopted by City Council in 2018. That included both new zoning, so there's mixed-use zoning along State Street now, and a new street design that was adopted into the transportation system plan. So that was really the base of this project that is now moving forward.
Which one does that one? Okay, so once we had that plan adopted, we started to look for funding. How can we get this vision that the community had implemented? And so we pursued different grant applications. One of the ones we got was improvements of State Street at 25th, the traffic signal there. There were some pedestrian improvements. The signal was replaced, and that just got completed this past summer. We also sought funding for some improved pedestrian crossings, specifically one at 21st Street, which will be constructed later this year. And then, really the big amount of funding that we got was through the bond measure, which the section from 12th to 17th Street, which is what Josh will be giving more detail about in a second. And I just want to point out this map. I know you can't read this very well from where you are. Is this the map we have outside or not? No, okay. This is a broader map. So this actually shows all the way from 12th Street at the left to 25th Street at the right. And what it's showing is the part to the left is the part that we have funding for, and we'll get more detail on. The part that's highlighted in yellow to the right is a part that we still do not have funding for. And so that would be something that we would continue to seek funding in the future to expand the project scope. One thing that this project does is it expands our network of protected bike facilities. When we combine look at the projects that we have coming with the bond measure from 2022, as well as some other previous investments. And so it will take you all the way from West Salem up by Harrod Drive, where you see that sort of, I guess, red line. Come down, there'll be a protected bikeway, cross over the Union Street bridge, along the Union Street bikeway, down to our 12th Street promenade that's been in place for over 20 years, and then join in with these buffered bike lanes on State Street. So from the time we adopted the plan, so when we were working on the State Street plan, 2015 to 2018, we were doing a very conceptual level design. We didn't have all the details of a survey and things like that. And so since then, we've had some design updates, and Josh will get a little bit more detail on this, but we added bike lanes from 12th to 13th Street. We made the bike lanes protected between 13th and 17th. The original plan had not called for that. And we also made changes at the 17th Street intersection to minimize property acquisition that would be needed. And we also have to include Americans with Disability Act requirements, components, as well as stormwater. And we're going to include a water line replacement. That was not part of that original plan, but when you're redoing a street, you really want to take care of what's underground also. So pass it to Josh to get into this project.
Okay. So the project goal, as said, is to create a vibrant walkable corridor with a focus on safety for all users. Currently, it's pretty vehicle focused in this area, so we're trying to also bring safety to peds and to bikes. So the budget for this project is about $15 million. Most of that money comes from the 2022 Safety and Livability Bond. A smaller portion, about $2 million, is coming from utility rates, and that's going to fund the water line replacement. Design began in late 2024. One of the first things we did was hire our design consultant, HHPR. We've kicked off design. We've taken that initial concept from the planning study, kind of brought it to a preliminary state. We took it last month to a public open house to present it to the public and get some feedback. And then we expect construction in 2028 and 29. So project scope, there's way more things going on this project than what's shown here, but these are kind of the big ticket items. So this is a full street reconstruction. We're redoing all of the paving, new wider sidewalks and curbs. We're adding bike lanes. We're doing a lane reconfiguration. We're doing traffic signals and intersection improvements. We're adding a pedestrian crossing, and then, as mentioned, the water line. So this is the same map that we passed out. There's a bigger 10-foot map out in the hallway if you want to check it out when you leave. And I know this is hard to see, but just to kind of give you a general feel of what we're doing and the size of the project. So all the kind of black hatched area, that's all the new pavement that we're going to be doing. You can see the new striping layout on there. The kind of gray and yellow hatch around the outside of the black. That's where we're going to have all the sidewalk and kind of frontage improvements. I guess one thing to note with this is at the 12th Street intersection, currently there's 3 lanes that come across that intersection. We're going to change that to make the right lane a right turn only, so only 2 lanes come across. And what that does is help us keep as much of the parking as we can between 12th and 13th, and it takes away having to merge vehicles at 13th Street when we go down to the single lane. So what does this look like if you're a vehicle using this street when we're all done? Like I said, we're doing pavement reconstruction, so it'll be a nice smooth street there. We're going to reconfigure the travel lanes. Currently, most of this is a 4-lane section. So that's kind of what, there's an example here from Broadway over between Pine and the Parkway. That one was a 4-lane street, 2 lanes in each direction. That one got the lane reconfiguration as well. Went down to 3 lanes, travel lane in each direction with a center turn lane. It gives us the ability to add bike lanes. And then it gives kind of a protected area for left turns rather than someone having to stop in a travel lane. Typically that causes a lot of accidents, either rear ends or people diving around cars trying to keep going. We're going to do signal improvements at 14th Street and 17th Street. And then at 14th Street, we're going to be adding a dedicated left turn lane at the signal for both the northbound and southbound movements. So if you're a bike using this area, it's probably pretty scary right now because there are no bike lanes. So we're going to be adding buffered bike lanes, 5.5-foot minimum bike lane with a 2-foot buffer. Kind of a, I guess, more unique thing that we're doing is we're going to kind of mimic the style on Union Street. This bike lane does tie into Union Street from the promenade. So what's different about that is we have the travel lane, and then we have the parking lane, and then we have the buffer and the bike lane, and then the sidewalk. So a lot of times you'll see the parking is on the curb side and the bike lane is between them. So what that does is that adds extra protection for the bikes, but it also takes out the conflict of a vehicle having to cross that bike lane to get in or out of a parking spot. And then we're going to put in a flashing warning sign at the 13th Street intersection. So where the east and westbound traffic comes together and they merge onto the one-way at 13th there. We're just adding some extra flashing just to kind of warn people of any bikes going across that intersection just to bring more awareness to it. At 14th Street, we're going to be adding a bike box. So there's an example on there from Liberty and Trade from the 2024 pavement R&R project. So what that does is on the south side of 14th, it's a pretty wide street. So there's room for the bikes and the cars to travel next to each other. On the north side of the intersection, it narrows down to an 11 or 12-foot shared use lane. So that gives bikes an opportunity at a red light to get in front of the vehicles rather than having to try and merge in the intersection. And then as stated with the bike route, basically every major intersection along this corridor now will connect to a bike route. So pedestrian elements, new curbs and wider sidewalks. The big safety thing we're doing with this is we're doing these curb extensions. So there's a picture here from downtown. They're all over downtown. That gives more walkable space. The big thing that it does is it pushes the curb ramps out into the intersection a little bit, which helps with traffic calming, but it also reduces the distance that a pedestrian has to travel and be in the roadway with cars. We're going to be putting in new ADA curb ramps and push buttons at all the intersections. And then we're going to be putting in an enhanced crossing near 15th Street. So that's going to look similar to the rapid flashing beacon that's shown there. That one's on Lancaster, but we have them all over the city. So to kind of give you a visual of what we're going for with this, the study talked about having, there was a desire to have more kind of usable frontage space in front of some of these businesses. So we're trying to incorporate this furnishing zone. So there's an example here from downtown, and there's an example from 2nd Street in West Salem of kind of what we're going for. So both of these, there's the sidewalk that kind of runs along the back. And then in front of that, you have kind of a mixed space between landscape and some hardscape. So we know a chunk of that is going to be dedicated to stormwater facilities, but the intent would be to try and put landscaping and street trees in there. And then some of that hardscape space could be used for things like bike racks or benches or street lighting. So we don't know exactly what that's going to look like yet. We're still pretty early in design, and there's a lot of things that are going to have to go into this project, but that's kind of the feel that we're going for. So next steps for the project, we're going to continue design. Once we probably need to get to 30 or 60% design, and then we're going to kick off our right-of-way and easement acquisition phase. And then we're going to have a lot of utility coordination. There's a ton of utilities out there. So we're going to have to coordinate with all the utility companies and figure out any relocations and get that going. We're also going to have to coordinate with places like Chariots and figure out bus stops and how that's all going to work. For future outreach efforts, so we did our open house. We're here presenting this today. We're going to go to future open house meetings. We have a website specifically for this project. So the QR code will take you to that website. We'll be providing updates on there as they come through. We'll send out our normal project notification mailers. And then again, construction is looking like 28 and 29.
Questions for our panel? President Fairby.
Obviously, I'm a little bit close to this one because it encompasses my when we walked the streets, when we had some of the planning meetings and some of the engagement that we've had, this, like you said, was quite a few years ago. I think the concerns that were raised by the community was speed on State Street, pedestrian safety. When we walked the streets as a group of, I think there was 30 of us, we had city councilors, we had the mayor at the time. I don't think anybody felt safe walking on State Street just because of the speed of the traffic. There's also a large concern about flooding that's taken place multiple times there. There was not an understanding by city council or the mayor, or I'm not sure the city at the time, what the use of most of the homes were on that street, how they were going to be impacted by changes. And there was really no traffic counts done, I don't think, or understanding by altering the traffic, moving it from 4 lanes down to basically 2, the impacts that's going to have on Mission Street or Center Street. Has any of that work been done? Because at the time it came across as purely a bike. And I think that was what the community was upset about. You know, why we're flooding not being addressed. This is just a bike proposal. Has any of that work been done to help the flooding, help the traffic counts, understanding what this is going to do to all of the other communities as well?
Yeah, we did as part of the State Street Corridor Plan have a traffic analysis that was done. I believe that's been updated more recently, if you want.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll handle the traffic. Scott Manser with DKS, and we did the traffic modeling and evaluation. One of the things that's really confusing a lot of times is you think about 4 lanes and then dropping it down to 3 lanes. And now, Josh, could you go to the slide that showed the 4 lanes versus the 3-lane section? There's really a very small change in capacity, traffic capacity, when you go from a 4-lane section to a 3-lane section, because a lot of the peak periods, the morning commute coming in and the afternoon commute going out of downtown, is kind of the time where you're most interested in. And a lot of times the reason the capacity isn't that different is anytime somebody wants to turn left and go into one of the businesses or at one of the intersections, they're blocking that travel lane. So it really restricts the capacity of that travel lane. And by having that center turn lane now, it's much easier to get to businesses. You're going to the capacity, you're no longer blocking that travel lane. And so I understand the concern of you got going from 2 lanes to 1 lane, but that center turn lane is really adding a lot of capacity to the system. It's going to make it easier. As Eunice said, that there was a study that was done in 2018. We actually updated it, and traffic volumes have actually significantly reduced on State Street since even that study was done. We've projected out 20 years, and this lane configuration will work great during that time. A lot of the state offices, many of the people are working remotely, so you're seeing the volume down. And so we're able to really reallocate that space and make things work better from a multimodal standpoint.
I think that a speaker talked about the road diet though, that came to the forum, and he talked about how has there been studies, because road diet is one of his things that said it changed Portland and it didn't make it better for the community as far as, bringing in people from the outside. You guys anticipating this being having some impact in Salem?
Let me add one other thing. I think everybody in the room will be excited about this, other than Dick with Nell, because it's going to have a reduction, about 30% reduction in crashes. By having that turn, you have a lot of rear end crashes. Anytime somebody stops to turn left, you get a lot of rear end crashes on those through traffic. And that's another thing that it's going to make this road much safer. As far as your reference to Portland, I'm not that familiar with that. I'd have to maybe talk offline and learn a little bit more about what that is.
How about High Street? That was a real upgrade for body shops. Drive High Street, drive in and you back out, get into traffic, High Street, go across state. Is any evaluation on that?
For
that was about 15 years ago when they changed that bike for on high across from the courthouse. When you drive in and you have to back out and go in. Never seen a bike on that.
Trying to vision the.
Here we have the.
Bike lanes.
I'm sorry, what?
Right in front of Willamette Valley Bank, bike lane and the 2 auto lanes, and you have to cross the bike lane to get into the parking. And then a lot of times people back out and they use the bike lane to then turn right onto State Street.
Yeah.
There's more of a bicycle education that needs to go out to all the bicyclists of using bicycle lanes and not the sidewalk. I was almost hit yesterday downtown right by the mall from a guy riding on the sidewalk.
One of the differences though, Josh, I don't know if you want to show, is we've actually moved, I think for the situation I'm envisioning, I can't perfectly picture the High Street example, but in this case, we're actually moving the bike lane on the opposite side of the parking to eliminate exactly what you're talking about.
Like how you have the designated bike lane off of the.
For our panelists. Okay, we did run a little long today. First of all, thank you for being here and for your work. We appreciate you being here. Okay, there's a very key meeting occurring 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Salem Convention Center. The Salem Chamber is hosting the first mayoral debate. Mayor Julie Hoy will Councilor Vanessa Nordyke for the seat of mayor. That will be in your May election. We invite all of you to be with us on Monday for that. And Salem City Council meeting will meet at 6 p.m. Monday. We encourage you to be there as well, where we will talk a little bit about the state of small businesses here in Salem and in Oregon. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned. Thank you for your time today.